guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at the CRKT Bona-Fide. If you're not familiar with this model, it's a Ken Onion design, and it is the first model from CRKT to have the new field strip technology. So the way this works is you pop this guy into this position and the whole knife comes apart. There you go. And so the question that I've been asking about this, and I've really been thinking about this for a little while, wondering kind of how I should approach this. And the thing that I think matters most of all right, in terms of this review and whether I can recommend this, or whether this will be a knife that you viewing this will be, really enamored with and really, find suits you really well, is would you buy this knife if it didn't have field strip technology? All right. And by the way, I guess the further question to that, and I really want you to answer this down in the comments below. If you saw this knife, if it didn't have field strip technology, it was just like that, would you be interested in buying it? And I suppose you have to add for the money. All right. Now this is $100, and part of that price, I think, is because of the field strip technology. So let's imagine for a moment, the real question for the review is field strip technology worth whatever extra they're charging? Okay, because I will say, I think the answer is yes. If this was like a $50 knife, or something like that, maybe $45 from CRKT, which is a pretty typical price for them for, an aluminum handle and 1.4116 steel. Would you buy this for like 45 bucks? And I'd say, yeah, for 45 bucks, this is not that bad of a knife. There are a couple little things missing here, but I could see this being at least mildly appealing. And we'll talk about why that is in a couple of minutes. So the question becomes, is field strip technology worth the extra, $50 to $55 that you're paying in order to get this up to the $100 price point? Okay. First let me sort of support my argument, okay, that this is a knife that's in that $50 ballpark. The knife is, by the way, I should point out here as well, this is a particular variation of the knife with the black coated blade and the green aluminum with this coating on it. There's a D2 version that's, instead of a full flat grind, it's sort of a saber grind with a bit of a modified drop point, and it's in sort of a gray finished aluminum with the same coating and texturing on it. All right, and I think, yeah, this knife with this configuration, I could see CRKT charging like 45, 50 bucks for it. First, I think you can make a decent argument for that. This is a decently done aluminum handle. It's got an attractive design from Ken Onion. D2 steel is fairly common at the price point. Now, the 1.4116 steel is not so common, but it's not bad. I've tried it out on some cold steels, and it seems to perform reasonably well. The grind here is fairly well balanced. So this is moderately thick blade stock with a flat grind, so it actually cuts decently well. I've tried to clean it up a little bit from the cutting that I've done with it, and I think I got it looking okay. So yeah, I could see spending 50 bucks on this. Now the steel, as I said, on this particular version is so it's sort of like, in a perfect world, all right, I would want this blade shape, the flat ground blade, with D2 steel, and leave the coating on, because at least the coating would help the D2 not to rust, I suppose. My main complaint for this knife, if it wasn't for the field strip technology, would really just be the detent. And it's not, as you can see, the knife does deploy. I'm going to see if I can, you can see though that I can sort of whip the knife out with not a whole lot of pressure. All right, which, so that's kind of showing you that the detent is not as strong as it could be. This is not a super snappy knife. And I suspect for some people, you might even need a little bit of wrist to get it to deploy reliably. All right, so that would be my biggest complaint. If I were just reviewing this knife as it is and it didn't come apart, the big complaint would just be the detent. So, at that point, I would be like, yeah, for 45, 50 bucks, this is an okay knife. It's got an interesting design, kind of a full bolster and this neat texturing, which is okay. And the blade steel is okay again, but the grind is pretty nice. So, less than stellar detent, Yeah, that's not the end of the world. It still deploys when I want it to. Could I see spending 45 bucks on this? Sure. Right. And maybe CRKT could make it even a little bit cheaper than that if they weren't adding the field strip technology. So moving on from that point, the question becomes, is field strip technology worth the 50 or $55 that we're adding to the price? And this is a little bit of a different discussion because I have to admit that it's kind of cool. All right. And they have done a good job with the mechanism. All right. This is one of those things where it's kind of a novelty that is pretty impressive. The knife does pop apart. There's a little spring-loaded sort of thing in here that holds this in place. It's really neat from that perspective, but it's sort of, it's appealing in the way that, say, one of those I don't know if you ever had one of your kids or a neighbor's kid or whatever get um, one of those metal circles. It's a circle, it's a series of metal rings that's been wound through, and you can put your hand through it. It'll kind of roll down your arm. It's kind of a neat thing. And if you see one and you get a chance to play with it, you really want to. It's sort of, you're almost compelled to just pick this up and fool around with it. And that's what I would say about this. Like, it's cool and it works really well, but it's not like the end of the world. Like, it's not, I mean, it's not the end all and be all, right? It's not going to be, wow, this knife was just a total piece of garbage until they added this great, amazing technology that makes it the most fantastic thing ever. It just doesn't do that. Frankly, although there could be some need to take your knife down on some kind of regular basis, for most knife people, that's not a thing, right? To fully disassemble your knife is just not that common. Really, for 99% of what we need to do by maintenance, you could even just loosen the pivot here off, spray it out with some forced air, put a little lubricant in there. You can clean it really without taking the whole thing apart. And then, maybe once a year or something, you do take the whole thing apart. So that becomes the biggest challenge for me, right? Now, let me comment on this just a little. I'm a YouTuber, so I can do this. I can pick on my fellow knife enthusiasts, my fellow YouTubers, I should say. I know on YouTube there's a lot of talk about, the screws need to be a certain size and everything needs to be put together a certain way because when you take it apart, it needs to be really easy to take apart and put that back together. That's kind of a thing, but the fact is most people do not take their knives apart, right? It's just YouTubers who do that. And I think there's value to it because it gives you a chance to see the internals of the knife. But just because some of us like to take our knives apart all the time doesn't really mean that that's a thing in the broader community. I guess for the more diehard fans who are more interested in the engineering and that kind of thing, it may happen, but it's really not necessary most of the time. All right. Now, further to this, the name field strip implies that it functions like a gun. And when it comes to having a gun, it is nice to be able to pop your gun apart and clean it out. But that's because guns, in their regular functioning, they foul themselves, right? Every time you create a little explosion in the chamber, you spray dirt and dust and chemicals all over the place, and it fills up the gun and gets it dirty, and parts need to be cleaned and maintained. All right, so it makes really good sense to make a gun easy to take apart because you're going to need to do that on a pretty regular basis. A knife is not the same. Every time I cut something, blade filings aren't flying back in here to the handle and messing it up and corroding the metal and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't, it's not the same. All right, so the technology is kind of a solution looking for a problem. And based on all of that, what I have to say about this knife is if you want a really good, $50 knife, look, I've got lots of great options here for you. Rat Model 1, CJRB Feldspar, any number of CRKTs, which I don't happen to have with me right now. Even the Kershaw Highball XL. Now this, I don't like this as much as these two, but I think it costs a little less as well. So there is that to consider. But there are lots of great $50 knives that have as good of materials or even better materials than this, and will do everything you need for that $50. Okay. If the ability to take down your knife is an absolute must have for you for some unknown reason, then yeah, buy this. This is great for that. If you just really like the fidget factor of it, if you like the idea that this can come apart really really easily, and that's kind of cool, hey, no problem. If you got $100 to spend for that level of novelty, more power to you. Go ahead and buy one. But for the vast majority of knife users, I really don't feel like this knife is necessary, and I feel like you can get a lot more for your money. If you're gonna spend $100 on a knife, you'd be better off to have better blade steel and better handle materials, such as, I don't know, a cold steel American Lawman or a cold steel Code 4, both of which would be fantastic options for around that same money. So there you go, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check those channel sponsors. It's a huge help. We will talk to you soon.